Welcome to the session on making change stick, applying behavioral design. As Yasser mentioned, Yuli Cannon, and I am going to be your co-facilitator, co-creator, and a person who's going to just talk to you a little bit about what does it mean, how can you use that in your professional and personal lives. Again, I don't think that these tools are different. We just think about them sometimes differently. What to expect from the session, I already mentioned, not just me psychobabbling at you, but also hopefully me getting to know you. So the information that I share, I can tailor as we go, right? You all come from different backgrounds and have different aspirations in your professional and personal life and goals. So as much as I can share, it'll be of more value to you. Plus, at the end of your day, you guys are super tired. And it's a Friday Eve. So that's why I hope that it's going to be more an engaging session. And for that, I have put in the link a mural board session. So when we go into, I'll tell you how to join. If you haven't joined, haven't used, I'm just learning how to use it myself. It's super easy, and we're not going to do any crazy doodling stuff, but we're going to use that, and I'm going to go into a bit of a switch mode. So just to preface, I'll stop sharing, I'll reshare a mural board where we will get to know each other a little bit more, since it's such a large group and having you speak up, we're probably going to run out of time. So participation, not a change management training for sure, not training. More than anything, sharing concepts that you can apply in your professional and personal life, and that is specifically tailored to designing for behavior change. I hope you're in the right session, if that's what you signed up for. Yay, nay? Okay, you want to learn about that? Then let's go. So finally, I wanted to set the expectations so you know who is speaking to you. Yuli Cannon, I do believe a story matters. You all have stories. I do want to not just give you my titles, credentials, but tell you a little bit about why I'm in this field, why I'm passionate about this field, and what I'm doing professionally in this field. You know, born and raised, and I was born in a country, everybody knows it now for not the good reasons, Belarus. You know, raised in all over USSR, family served in the military. What are you doing? I just breathed on it and it's changing. Not yet. So see, technology. So raised in USSR, all over the place, military family. My family moved to United States in 2001. So we've been here for some time. San Antonio was a place where we landed, and certainly have become a home. So my whole Belarus is here now, meaning my whole family. And I say all that is because change and adapting and learning how to adjust to change has been kind of part of the life and experience. And it's always been very interesting to me how people navigate change, especially from perspective of an immigrant and a person who having to adjust and traverse 30 different environments. Translate all of that into in a professional field. You know, I professionally am trained therapist. You know, I've done education from your master's degrees from Belarus to master's in terminal degrees in the United States. And I worked as a therapist because you kind of have to get like 3,000 hours working as a therapist. So yes, there's laughing. It's one of those wonderful things that you learn after you get into something. But I've really never went into the field. So I've stayed in the business, but I'll tell you why I'm sharing this, because it's going to be so relevant. So I went into the business world, worked in consulting from a change management perspective, and I didn't even know what that is in 2012 when I started that journey. But some wonderful people said, well, you talk to a person one-on-one about behavior change. Like, yeah, it's all we do pretty much. It's people have to change behavior. If they come to me and say, I want to be happy, I'm like, well, what does it look like, right? hard to help. Think about scale, think about organization, right? So that was my first introduction to change management, where we're talking about organizations going through some transformation changes and needing to understand how do we bring people along. You can't just send a memo and communicate and expect that we all come along. So fast forward, that translated into some work that I've done with Veterans Affairs and doing some behavioral design work, where we literally mapped out behavior of the patients who were trying to be accepted into not just PCP, but the main provider, but into the psychiatric clinic. And we were trying to diagnose really what are the barriers? Why does it take so much longer? You guys might have remembered from a decade or so ago, there were a lot of controversy and the waiting list around VA and veteran experiences with mental health. I mean, it didn't go away. It's continuously been addressed, but it was a pretty hot issue. So I had a chance to work with a local clinic to really understand. And by the way, we didn't call it behavior design. That's just a new term, right? But we were just trying to understand what is happening. And today, I'm using all of this information and knowledge to, I work at a consulting firm, and I'm using all of this information and knowledge to work on force development initiatives for the future of the Air Force. Go figure. I'm sharing it not because it sounds so cool and I'm so high and mighty, but mostly because as you can see, my education is I'm a clinician who's been in business and understood how do you take this information around behavior science, and integrate it with business to increase outcomes. Needless to say, I don't see much difference now as a clinician of how you do it, whether with one client or large organizations. All I see is scale. Through my experience, the presentation, I'll share with you my story of how I came about to even deepen my knowledge, because I was just surprised of the low rate of transformation for organizations, how they struggled with it. And not that behavioral design and this knowledge is a panacea, but it certainly is a missing element. With that, I want to learn about you a little bit. So I'm going to switch the side and I'm going to invite you to join the mural board. So let me do this. I am going to change the view, and if you guys don't see it, I will stop sharing and reshare. But you guys are already joining. So in your, if you're new to mural board, in the comment section, I dropped a link. Click on this link. You don't have to sign up. Just say join as a visitor. You don't have to have anything else. Awesome. I love seeing you guys joining. Now, let me ask you, do you see mural board or do you see my presentation slides?
We see mural board.
Okay, great. So I'm glad that technology is changing that way. So by the way, I'm so happy with this new tool, and I'm still learning. So if you guys are not clear about this and somebody is super versed, but one thing that I wanted to ask you, I'd like to get to know you. So as you come into the session, tell me a little about your, or put on a sticky. And by the way, here are the stickies that I added, and you can also just go here, grab a sticky and drag it. You can copy out the stickies. You can put the little dot. I'd like to know about your, that's, by the way, all this movement, there's a way to lock it, but yours dearly is still learning. Okay, there you go. Grab a sticky, add your professional background, and what do you call home? If anybody's having a challenge, don't worry, put something in the notes. I see you guys navigating.
I apologize. Quick question. How do we access this mural board?
No problem. Don't apologize. Cody, let me make sure. Go into comments. in Zoom.
Okay.
And I put a link in there. Click on this link, open the link and join as a visitor. Let me
Okay.
know when you
So
see the link.
I am in the meeting chat, but the meeting chat is blank. It might be because I joined a little bit later.
Oh, no problem.
Um,
I will open it up and
there we go. I appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah, of course. How do you? So I use a lot of whatchamacallit, Teams. Let me go to the original one. Do, do, do. Do, do. Why am I not seeing? Do, do, do. Nope. Do you see a chat? Can you send, can you put something in the chat? It's the message is not popping up for me. Meaning that the chat box. We love technology when it works. Put something in there. Oh, there it is. It's here. The control panel went there. Ah, no wonder I was going, where is it? Okay. All right. I just put it in there again. Cody, see if you can join. All right. Guys, I see you floating in there. Let me give you an example of how to add something now that you're able to join. Just grab a sticky and I'm going to increase the size. And you can put, you know, your, just like I put right there. Yuli Cannon, Human Capital Consulting, Minsk, Belarus. Oh, by the way, this is because we all in here and that's doing it. Doesn't matter if you don't put it in the right place. Yeah. I love it. By the way, there's a way to lock this, which I'll totally learn for next time. So if your Dallas location lands somewhere in Mexico, you're okay. We know what Dallas is. So we have Dallas, Oklahoma. Yasser told me a little bit about your background, but feel free to add. So we, I don't mean to shh. I keep moving the map instead of, there you go. There you go. This will not move enough. Thank you. Somebody's putting just on the side because you're like, I'm done with the map. Yeah, put it anywhere. Air Force. Thank you for your service. I'm currently working with Air Force and I'm really enjoying learning that environment. Viviana, you came up, okay. Thank you for your service, even if you're a civilian. So we have engineers, we have IT infrastructure. Oh, I'm glad I'm couching this discussion about it. It's going to be some psychobabble, so I'm putting the box around it. Orange County, we were just in LA recently. And those of you who say, I'm sorry, I don't have time or capacity to join another, feel free to drop where your professional background, what you call home, just in chat notes of this Zoom as well. Air Force. Oh. It's come from a very, very diverse background. Well. And we just moved it again. That's all me, you guys. See? There you go. They're back. Who's that? Do, 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 do. Love how you diligently trying to place your dot on the map where you are, because that's important. Location matters. And then somebody comes in and just like, whoosh, which is just fine. So fair to say we have a diverse group. Some of you are have a very technical background. I understand we also have some folks with more liberal arts background. Software engineering, project management, okay. Okay, I love somebody just wrote in there. This side, I love it. I love it, I love it. By the way, somebody is dividing the world. Okay. Please keep putting it in there. We're gonna come back to this mural board. This was, I love seeing what you're putting on there. And we're gonna come back to this because we're gonna use this for a couple of reasons to keep you more engaged and focused. That's an important part of behavior change, is focus and attention, not too much of just me babbling. Fantastic. I'm moving to this side. All right. With that, now that you are complete pros in mural board, I'd like to, and thank you so much for sharing about who you are. Two reasons I use the tool. Definitely wanted to understand a little bit about your background, where you're coming from, and as well show you that this is a primary tool. I used to use different tools. They were not as exciting, but now we're starting to use Mural, and it is a DoD approved tool. So if any of you are working in your federal environment, I'm using it very successfully now with Air Force. And again, trying to create collaboration, focus is increased, engagement is increased when people are part of it and can voice, because not everybody is comfortable. Like, I understand the limitations of Zoom, Teams, or whatever environment. So this is a really good tool. Okay. With that, I'd like to continue. So, key concepts. I've already, does everybody know what we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about behaviors, right? More or less behavior design, but what the hell are you going to get out of it? My hope that by the end of the session, you're going to come out with several tools, which I will give you a hierarchy of those tools, which I think if you start using that in whether you're trying to look at yourself, good time, January comes and we all commit to something, or you are trying to sell an idea, like behavior change is an influence in your professional life, you're trying to influence change within your community. These tools are universal. So you're going to come up with the tools, and you come up with a framework. So because any tool has to be grounded in some kind of a model. And I'll give you a couple of recommendations for sources that, if you're interested, have space to read that or listen to some books that I think it really will elevate your knowledge even further. So behavior, very important to first get on the same page what behavior is without getting too technical. Behavior is really something we can observe. So it's something that you do and we can observe. coming from a therapist background, this was something that's so ingrained in me, because when you are working with clients and they come to you because they are hurting, nobody comes to therapy because they are trying to self-improve. That's, we wish. It's usually when people are really, really hurting. They come just with complexity of their situations and background. How do you help them? Well, venting doesn't work, right? The only change that's sustainable if a person starts doing something different, changing the environment and adopting a behavior that results in sustainable change, incremental change. So interestingly, I mentioned to you, like I've been in this business world, and what was interesting, so I've stayed in the teaching and therapy world till 2017. So I've never really left that side completely, but I've been working in the business world for last decade. So here I am in the, being a counselor, and how do you measure effectiveness of your work? Like, what are your thoughts, guys? What is the effectiveness of counselors' work? Not a trick question. Do your clients get better? Like, period. Like, do your clients get better? Like, can you imagine working day in, day out and your clients don't get better? And your success rate is 30%. That's not a sustainable model. You're probably going to feel that you're not doing your job. Well, interestingly, all varies, but if you're using evidence-based, and all that means is that tools have shown to be effective and approaches, therapy can be effective. Again, there are variations, the medication, etc., not to get into, but therapy can be effective in 60 to 70% of the cases. And this is a rough order of magnitude. 60 to 70% of the cases, therapy, with a lot of, provided the person stays, does, and continues to do. I've seen amazing outcomes when people pursued and did the work, and people who were on the streets, people who, because of conditions that are very, very severe and serious, and went left untreated. Here's why I'm saying this to you. I joined the business, and all I read in business reviews, anybody reads Harvard Business Review or any other business articles? Well, in transformations, and what is the transformations? Have your organizations ever implemented something new, tried to adopt a new process, new system, change the way it does the work, change policy? Right? Organizations, especially today, are constantly trying to implement something, trying to change the way that they do business, trying to reinvent, because change is coming fast. Technology is disrupting the world. I guess if you were to make a look at your experience in your organizations, what is the success rate of those transformations? And again, rough order of magnitude. What do you think is the success rate of transformations in organizations? If you were just to take a wild guess.
10%.
10%. I have 30. You guys, if you don't want to speak up, just put in the notes, put in the chat while you're cooking dinner, working with your animals, because that's what dinner time. 70, 25. I got a range, 15. So success rate 27. Wow, somebody's really good. It's pretty low. You actually are in the right category. This is like a lower quartile. It ranges like cultural transformations. It's single digits, depending on maturity organizations. But kind of a blanket statement, I say 70% of transformations fail. So then let me let this sink in. Here I am coming from a therapy background. My success rate is 70%, give or take. And on transformations, I come in and I'm going to help manage change. Success rate is 30%. Like, what is going on here? What is the delta? Well, it would be easy to say that it's all because we didn't really think about people, but truly, most changes fail because of many challenges related to the leadership, behavioral change, and really underestimating what it takes for us to do something different. Transformations require people to learn new skills, to get into the new environment with confidence. It requires so many things. And what I began to do over the time of my course is not only taking the change management, but really start weaving in some of this behavioral design techniques and tools that I've carried from the therapy that I've continued to develop into how I've approached my clients. And if nothing else, I hope that the tool that you will get, you'll also consider for your work as well. So what is behavioral design? New term, but it's really just a way of understanding how human behavior can be changed as a result of the work that you do. So it does incorporate behavioral science. When I say B-side, please know I'm going to say behavioral science. I may sometimes drop B-side, but it means behavioral science, broad term, psychology, behavioral economics, kind of everything under the umbrella of disciplines that study behavior in humans. So behavioral design is really as focused on implementing behavioral science and design concepts, putting a person at the center of change or thing that you're trying to do, and really understand how do we develop interventions, and by interventions, techniques, strategies, activities that will help a person change. That's the most important thing, I think, that I wanted to really, that's why I spent so much time on definition and what it is and so what is not behavioral design? It's not a coercion. This is not something that, we use to manipulate. All of this is often used with just understanding and participation of people. And more than anything, it is about influencing. So if you pay attention to this and if you delve into this, your chances of influencing and getting from the 70% failure to 70% success are going to increase a little bit. And that's been my experience. Where I get tripped up is when my clients say, this is too fluffy and too soft. I do like now that behavioral design, I can speak all in process terms, and I'm a process person by heart. So it works. So you can make it as concrete as possible for people who just don't have a stomach for the psychobabble too much. So why focus on behavior? We often think in therapy terms or just in general, feelings, thoughts, they're very important. If you follow anything, you control your mind or clear your mind, pay attention to your thoughts, how you feel. It's really important. I don't take me that I'm trying to dismiss that, but a client would come to me and say, I just want to feel a sense of relief. I just want to be happy. How would I know what it means? What is happy for, let's say, Kamal or Steven or Anthony? I'm reading your guys' names. Like, what is happiness, right? I don't know. I have to deconstruct. Well, how would I know that you're happy when you come to see me? How do I know? What would I look like? So it's really important that when we think about influencing or changing behavior and design for behavior, we really identify what is the target behavior, because it is going to impact the outcomes. And of course, thoughts and feelings are just important. We're going to talk about them. But ultimately, if we design for thoughts and feelings, we can measure it. I'm sorry, I can measure it. They're fleeting, they're all very important, but without measurement, most likely, we're not going to be very successful or have a precise way of intervening. So very important that in behavior design, we first think about what is the target behavior. Trick question. So you guys can take it to mural or put it into chat. What is behavior and what is not? So what is behavior and what is not? I will take it back to our mural board if you all do not mind. And okay, let's do this. If it's a behavior, there you go, sticky, put a B. If it's not a behavior, put a sticky that says NB. So what is a behavior, what is not? I think it's sometimes so important to first, like, what is behavior, what is not, before we start getting further into that. BB, okay, see B's and we'll put some more NB. So behavior. We got 6 items here. You guys are really navigating it so swiftly and smoothly. I see somebody put that it's a cool tool. It's a cool tool. I'm learning it. I have so many templates too. Behavior. Somebody's saying it's not. Somebody decided to go rogue and go with a round sticky. Yeah. We have consensus on some of them and we have some no consensus. I love it. This is great. Okay, let's take 10 more seconds and we'll come back to it. By the way, I was meeting with my client right before, so I'm like all dressed up for you guys. All right, pencils down. First one, going for a walk 3 times a week. Remember what we defined as a behavior. We briefly said it's something you do, something you can observe. Behavior or non-behavior? Anybody want to take a crack? Cody, I see you trying. Because you're off camera, I'm gonna have to pick on you and Viviana. You guys are giving me a chance to.
Hello?
I see everybody else is hiding.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that would be considered a behavior.
And why is that? What do you think?
It's something you can observe and it's repeated.
Yeah, it's something you do. You go
Yeah,
for a walk and it's pretty concrete. And the other piece that you can start looking from is we think about target behavior. We're pretty precise. Not just, I want to feel better, I want to go for a walk. Well, how often are you going to go? So it's even more specific. So the more specificity in behavior, it's great. Love the next one, because we have a bit of a split there. Okay, I want to hear from people who think it's a behavior first. And can anybody say why you think it's a behavior? Whoever put a B next to inspiring others. We're learning, so you guys don't be shy. Only because we have limited amount of time. You know I'm a therapist. Silence is okay with me.
Not measurable.
Yes. It's so hard, you guys. How do I know? Like what do you mean by inspire? What I mean by inspire is going to be very different. So although it's like, well, what do you mean? It's you do something to, but they're actions and behaviors that you do to inspire others. So inspiring others will be an outcome. But if you're designing for this, it's going to be so very difficult to say, well, let's see what you're going to do. First of all, what behaviors result in inspiring others? We're going to have to define what that means. We're going to take a step back, right? Maybe it is you meet with your mentee on a weekly basis and provide feedback and encouraging assignment leads to inspiring others. You post motivational, inspiring content on LinkedIn on a weekly basis. Because we'll have to take it back. All depends on how we connect the dots. But do you see why this is going to be? By the way, please know there's not like hard science. But in behavioral design term, this is not going to be behavior I can design for. If I'm working with a client, I'm going to tell them to let's first understand what target behavior or behaviors will result in inspiring others. Okay, saving $25 a month. Behavior, non-behavior, we have a split. Now that you know, you can go and change if you need to, now that you're learning more. Concrete. Pretty concrete. What we didn't do is how you're gonna save, but it's a good start. I want to save, and you give me, it's gonna be $25, and it's not just saving for retirement. Speaking of, number 6 is juxtaposition there, because I put preparing for retirement. What is preparing for retirement means for Maya, Sean, Heather, maybe very different. What it means for, Yuli, Yasir, and Dino, right? We make assumptions what this means. So when we say when we prepare for retirement, if you're designing for the behavior, depending where your client is, you want to be very specific. This may be saving $25 for a month, signing up for 401k by January 1st, or whatever it is. That's a target behavior. Reading a book chapter daily. Almost consensus, except for one, that it's a behavior, and I'd say it is a behavior. Why? Something we do, something we can observe. And by the way, we can count if you read a chapter or not a chapter. Okay, and the last one, we all unanimously agree. Why is losing weight not a behavior?
It's non-specific. I think that's a major thing.
Perfect. I love how you guys are also participating on chat. I do see the chat here, so thank you so much. Okay. Do you see how it's not hard, but at the same time, there's a bit of a challenge, right? You got to think about. It's so easy to say influence behavior, make change, but there's a science and an art to it. So take away from this exercise that it has to be something that you do, and something you observe, something you can measure. And if behaviors are too hard, if we design for those behaviors, we've got to break them into several behaviors. Then it's easier to design for it, and you will see as to why. Thank you for participating, team. I am going to go back to the slide deck and continue. Okay, time check. How's everybody doing? Anybody needs a break, or you guys are good? It's only 45 minutes in. All right, let's continue. Now I want to give you just a tad bit of a theory. Let me cycle bubble for a little bit, but it's going to come together. So anybody heard intention, action gap? We have a good intention. We all have good intentions. But unfortunately, not all of our intentions result in desirable outcomes and actions that follow through, or they just simply fall off the cliff. And in psychology, we call it intention action gap. And it's a really big challenge when we think about just sharing desired information with people. And this is where, sorry, love Nike as a brand, don't agree with them. Just do it. It's not going to cut it when you do behavior change. What do we do though when we try to change and influence behavior? And you're going to start hearing me say influence, because behavior change is about influence, whether self or others. And that's where the science of that lies, that it's not fast, and influence is never fast. One thing that just amazes me, because this is kind of a common knowledge, and I just put some of those things in there, meaning this is what we do. We put up warning signs, like, don't do it. Employees wash hands, like, right? Or we try to give incentives. Speaking of, right now, working on some projects as well, where we're looking at how do we increase retention rates in specific area of the Air Force, and we're looking historically what they've done. Interestingly, almost every single intervention was about signing bonus, dollar sign, dollar sign, dollar sign. Seems logical. We'll talk about why it doesn't really change behavior long term. Stop doing this. Or, don't you love this one where we just kind of solution? Have you ever tried to do something and somebody tells you immediately what you need to do? Okay, Viviana, thank you for the nod. Cody, thank you for the nod. Kimberly, yes. The best thing, like, thanks. If I didn't know what to do, I'd Google it, especially like these days. Somebody comes to me and asks me a question, like, have you Googled it first, right? We have so much information. We don't have a problem with knowledge most of the time. And by the way, as you learn more throughout this presentation, that telling is probably one of the last things you ever want to do. But boy, when you go to organizations, and by the way, now that you are gonna start looking at what your organizations do from transformation perspective, and you see what they try, how they're trying to entice or guide change, you'll see change is coming, rejoice my people, or here the bonus, and you will see, oh, don't do it, this is the worst thing, you're not complying. You're going to see these things all the time. And I hope by the end of this presentation, you will guide your leaders, friends, and you will not do this because they don't work in most cases. And here's what we forget. We forget that behavior change is very complex. Context is king, as cliche as it sounds. I don't care how you're going to design for behavior. If your environment is not conducive, it's going to trigger, it's going to set you off. I remember working, again, back to my counseling days, and that's the first thing you do with a client. And I work a lot with clients who have either survived abuse, and many of them were dealing with addiction and homelessness. And when you are dealing with addiction, one of the first things you do, right? You map out where you go, how do you avoid areas that are emotional or triggering, right? Context is everything. So we also overestimate our willpower. Thinking about it is like, I'm gonna do, and then by the way, I'm not sure, it's Thursday night, you guys are gonna be so inundated with this. Some of you are gonna be so tired, some of you are gonna be so excited. That extra cookie, glass of wine, whatever your vice may come in. Willpower is a literally limited resource, but we rely on that, especially when we're encouraged, which is fine. We make impulsive decisions because, again, this is who we are, not all the time, but impulse. It's not that you don't have control, but decisions are made in the moment. That's just normal. So when designing for behavior, we really forget about all those things. I didn't put everything on there, but sometimes the biggest thing, and I've looked at through my research and things that I've done, we simply forget. Have you ever signed up for something you just forget because it's in the background somewhere? So I don't know why it keeps changing. The chasm is real. And there's a better way. I am a true believer. And again, like I said, there's a zeitgeist right now of behavioral science, but it's a modality, a approach that can help you in your personal life and your professional life to really think about how do we do it with more understanding. But there is an important debate. We've got to put a stop to that. And you're probably going to think, well, you talked about behavior, now you're talking about emotions. Just bear with me. But the 2,500-year-old debate about rational and irrational, it's so funny. It's so cliche. As a matter of fact, if any of you like the science and interested, Daniel Ariely's book around Predictably Rational is probably one of the better books around this topic, especially around decision making. But I put two figures in there, Plato and Sigmund Freud. For those of you who may not recognize them, I don't know why you keep changing. It has to stop. And here's why it has to stop. Emotions do play a role in shaping your behavior. We can't ignore emotions. We can't just say, James, be rational. You're not being rational right now. None of us are. We're both. We are emotional and we're rational. And these are not two sides. It's one coin and it's one brain. And this is where the brain science. So guys, if you're ever interested, I'll be happy to come back and give you more. I have so much information and around behavioral and neuroscience, specifically about brain science and how to incorporate that. But here's what I want to take away from this particular context. So think about the brain real quick. And by the way, this is how you can think about the brain. I hear people say my organization is guilty of overestimating willpower. I think we all are. So your brain. So if you fold your thumbs in your palm like this and slash it in half, this is half of your brain right there. A little anatomy, I should say, for you. Your brainstem right here, you know, your the lower part of your brain. We're not going to go through the whole triune part of the brain, but it's important to understand what this model, because when we think about willpower, we think about rational, we think about analytical, we think about doing things in a way that drives sustained behavior. The part that's very important for it is our prefrontal cortex. And this is this part of the brain. I'll say it's like, think about my fingernails area. It's a little bit bigger, but the one that's really responsible for driving behavior is this part. And it sits, if you flip your brain open, it sits right about this internal part. And if you have not heard about it, it's called amygdala, or your limbic system, your emotional part of the brain. By the way, for the neuroscience nerds, the simplification, pardon, forgive me, it works, but limbic part of the brain is more than just your amygdala, which is kind of your fire alarm. This is what gets you to jump when you see something. This works before you even rationally process what is triggering it, right? It ascertains what's happening internally, externally, and gets you to respond before you consciously process. Is it dangerous? Is it not? By the way, interestingly, your amygdala sits next to your hippocampus. Why is hippocampus important? You mouthed it, Cody, but you unmute. Memory.
Yeah.
So by the way, if you want to memorize, like if you're bored right now, you ain't going to remember anything about this. So memory is important, right? Emotions are important. So if you're trying to memorize something, you're trying to remember, watch your emotions or know where you are, what state you're in. It's very, very important. So why is this important, this whole thing? So your amygdala is so much more powerful. And by the way, when you see right here, when I say your prefrontal cortex, it monitors judgment, focus, planning, all this good thing that drive behavior change. Look how much capacity of your total brain volume it occupies. 10%. So imagine you're starting every day with 10% of your battery on your phone. Are you going to make it through the day with your iPhone or your Android phone? That's how you start every day with your brain. So when I say contacts, when I say willpower, when I say positive emotions, to sustain behavior change, you have to really recharge the battery, right? You've got to recharge your prefrontal cortex. Well, this is where your amygdala, this is your limbic system comes in. The emotions are very important. And rational debate is totally off. They're both important in sustained change in our functioning. So, and always remember, for your brain, you designed not to do this B-side design, engineering. We're designed to survive. Our brain is designed to keep us alive, survive. That's just what that's what its function. It works on recognition of patterns that it remembers. And in order for it to keep you alive, if its main function is to keep you alive, it needs to avoid danger. It needs to avoid anything that can potentially threaten your life. So bigger is bad is bigger for your brain. Always remember this, very, very simple. Anything bad is bigger for your brain in terms of what is going to pay attention. So don't discount emotions. Don't discount your emotional state when you think about behavior change. And like I said, it's a fly over the neuroscience, but it has a big part as we start designing for change. Just remember, if you're trying to drive towards something, The warning signs, negative information, warning signs, anything that's threat related, people controlling you, people micromanaging you, people sketching out every single thing that you're going to do. That drives an action. Why? Your brain perceives it as threat. Your brain perceives anything that threatens your survival, and micromanagement, being alienated, social connection is very important to us. Not being related to the peers, your status, and by the way, by status, I don't mean your status in society, although it's as important, but your status as a person being excluded, that drives inaction.
Did we lose Yuli?
I don't hear anything.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, can you hear me? Hello?
Okay, back again. I got booted out. All right. Give me a sign if you hear me all right. Okay, fantastic. All right. So to punctuate and foot stamp this messages, remember, as you start thinking about targeted behavior, be specific. Preparing for retirement is not a behavior. Losing weight is not a behavior. Never start with something that drives inaction and threatens your brain. And what threatens your brain, you probably know because it drives negative emotion. So if you're trying to design for change, what can you do to drive towards behavior change and bring the rewards? We're going to learn what those are. In the interest of time, I kind of spit it up to your reflection minute, but I do want to hear from you. Now that you've heard what I said about the brain, now that you've heard what you've learned a little bit about bad is bigger for the brain, why these strategies like warning signs, threats, just incentives, or telling somebody does not work. And I invite you to take a minute, and if you're willing to participate, drop your thoughts in chat. Feeling the threat from Zoom. Thank you, Viviana. It's so true. Full transparency. It's like everything has to align when you come to a new environment. Things are flipping, changing. And as long as we don't try to create a place where we have to be perfect, it's very normalizing. So why might this things not work based on what you've learned thus far about the brain? Yeah, thank you for sharing, definitely. You know, I like when we say we don't like change, but for some reason, you know, if you look at families having children, fashion, I guess those are big changes, right? We kind of want the change that we like. We definitely don't like the change that's imposed on us. Change is unknown. Unknown can be scary. That is, unknown is actually one of the scariest thing for the brain. Brain, remember, it's a prediction machine. It works in the algorithm. Have I done this before? Is it a new environment? I'm coming in, I'm not sure what to expect. And if I know I've done this before, I have competency. This is, by the way, it's an important thing as we start thinking about change in organizations. I always say, give people, you know, give us context, but competency is important. If we feel that we know how to navigate, even though it's scary, we feel a little bit more sure that, okay, I don't know, but I have general understanding. So uncertainty, all of those things, again, remember, change is uncertain, big, unclear, and it threatens the brain. So I always say, these things will never work. If somebody tells you what to do, like, do you like that? I know it's a very blanket statement, but without getting context, knowing how you'll be supported through this change. Incentives. Thank you for participating. Everybody is independent circumstances, exactly. But just to summarize what we've learned thus far, we avoid negative information. By the way, until it gets real bad, then we're glued to the TV. If you remember just recently with a global pandemic, right? Many of us were monitoring things because it was so prevalent. So just to say we completely avoid, no. But if it's uncomfortable, if it's something negative, we stay away from that. Self-control is always going to be an exhaustible resource. And by self-control, we can put willpower in there. Just remember 10% battery. That's what you operate on. Every day you get up, it's 10%. Unless you recharge, renew, you deplete. So that's an interesting piece to consider. Context, context, context. When designing for change, you've got to understand the context around the change. And what I mean by context, it's your environment. It's your, can be work colleagues, your community, your family, where you work, live, friends, etc. Context or environment in this case. The other piece why it doesn't work, based on what we've just learned thus far, always remember change is social in terms of we're social beings. Seeing other people do change normalizes experience for us. Social norms are important. You're coming into a new country, new environment. You want to understand how to navigate. What are the norms? So speaking of, we all work now in this very interesting, some work remotely, whether you go to school remotely, hybrid, like what is the norm? What is the context? It's a little bit more difficult to navigate right now. So designing for that has to be really intentional. Incentives are important, don't take me wrong, because when I say incentives in terms of retention, incentives, instead of trying to, I'll give you X, or if you do this, they're important, but not for long and sustained change. Incentives are important if you're trying to do something in the moment and if it's not intrinsic behavior. Intrinsic behavior is something that you drive, you want to sustain, and behavior change requires more sustained change. It has to come from, by the way, I say here, right? I don't know if it's here, but it has to be something that's more organic, that you're willing, that you're capable, and you have opportunity to practice. So offer rewards if a short-term behavior, but if you have a child, if you're trying to have them continuously tidy up, or you have a teenager trying to have them tidy up their rooms and things, or don't just give them incentives and give you $100, $5, not long term. Not going to work long term. So there is a better way. And this is going to be another very, very important tool I'd like to give you. When we design for change, we love talking about all the right ways. If you start doing X, you're going to do Y. If you start going to, I guess maybe it's December, right? Start going to the gym, you're going to be off to, you're going to feel more energy. If you start drinking more water, if you start, learning every day, taking micro learning courses. So, okay. We love this approach. And that is what organizations I see do all the time. Wrong. What approach is that? We call it fuel. We call it rewards. We call it giving you all the reasons why behavior is going to change for the better, why it's good for you. Many of you have put such a reflective things about it, and certain, I don't know, just because you say it's good, not sure I trust you. Just remember this framework. And by the way, I love the work. So if any of you are going to be interested, it's the work by, and you're going to get the slides. I'm going to send them to Yasir with some additional tools. It's called The Human Element, where they do such a brilliant job distilling this work. So if you're getting tired hearing me, just know like, oh, there'll be a tool coming. Focusing on just giving rewards is absolutely backwards way in designing for behavior change. Remove, I guess I'm moving so much. You got to think about if the bad is bigger for the brain. Imagine if you would remove the bad. Imagine if you would to remove the barriers and the friction points, that's what we call them. It is more likely that if you add that fuel and you remove the friction, the behavior change will occur. Very important to start changing and flipping the framework about if I identify target behavior, if I start doing this, not how can I sustain, but how can I remove the barriers or the frictions that preventing this behavior from occurring? What is friction? So much of it. The distillation of what the friction is really boils down to these 4 categories. Inertia. Habits are hard to break. Status quo is very, very, very hard to break. This is a very tough area. And when we diagnose behavior for design, this is one we try to understand how much of a status quo, whether it's how the organization does things, whether it's how you do things or your family thing, inertia is very hard to break. We tend to stick to what's familiar. Remember the brain? If I know it, I can predict it, I can like it, I can anticipate it, right? So inertia is a very important friction point to address. 10% battery, effort. If it takes a lot of effort, we're not going to like that. Meaning, mental effort and physical effort are very, very difficult for sustained behavior change. By the way, one of the best probably recommendations from Richard Thaler, he won the Nobel Prize in Behavioral Economics, really elevated this whole choice architecture, behavioral economics, and conversation behavior design to where organizations are now hiring for this stuff, especially in product development and product design. He said, make it simple for people. Here's your recommendation. It's like, distill it all to how do you really sustain change? And I have to agree with him. You make it simple, it's much easier. You're still going to have some grumbles. You're still not going to be blah, blah, blah. Make it simple should be one of the hallmarks of behavior design. Third friction point, emotions. Remember I told you that emotions have a role. Brain, half of your brain, this limbic system is very important. It listens to what's going on inside. So if any of you are hungry, tired right now, you're like, oh my goodness. Or you still, processing information from your day. It's impacting your behavior. It's impacting your prefrontal cortex. So negative emotions are going to drive inaction. Remember that. So it's hard to sustain change. So it's a friction point to consider in designing change. And lastly, that's the telling part. Reactance is really, it's really impulse to resist change, especially the change we don't buy into, meaning the change we didn't subscribe to. Those 4 friction points, if you don't remember, you'll get the little booklet and information if you want to read the book. If you start thinking about behavior change, these are going to be very, very important to remove as you start adding some positive things, because you have to have positive emotion, right? You have to anticipate that. You got to address those. And as you get, we're not going to go through all of them. I want to touch on a few. There are ways to make things, for instance, in any change, status quo, habits are hard to break. Just because you're going to change or try to change a habit, it doesn't happen overnight. In organizations, one of the things, you know what I do? They tell me, oh, we're going to do this, and then it's going to happen in January. I know it'll take me another quarter to sell idea. And all I do, I just drop ideas. I try to make this familiar, because then I'm working against the inertia, because I'm starting to plant the seed. So planting the seeds is a very important thing. Making things familiar, dealing with habits is also about setting the environment, having reminders, having visual cues, using analogies. So it's not like, what are we doing? We're going to be what? So inertia is possible to deal with. Just please know, none of this thing is like instantaneous. And that's why design comes in, because it's trial and error. We all very different. In organizations are big machines and scale is larger. But I already know, for instance, right now I have this a task that we're going to use a new template. We're going to do this new research process, and it's big, a revolutionary change for organization. Anytime you hear revolutionary change, just kind of go like this, like, oh, it's not going to happen. I already know that here's a plan and here's like the real plan that's going to happen. So how do I start thinking about setting this selling idea? Because if I'm going to present this whole plan for the new thing, people are going to go, more work, right? They're going to completely shut it down, and everything else I say of why it's so good for you. I'm starting to think, how do I think through removing some of the barriers we have right now before we start selling this idea? Make it easy, like I said, wherever you can. From the perspective, by the way, some of you in project management, and think like a UX designer, and this is where I really love the design aspect, because what do designers do? They put the person in the middle and think about all the steps of change, streamlining the process, removing unnecessary things from the process, whether it's in your personal life or your professional life, is very important. And a few more things. Around emotions, I put self-efficacy here intentionally. And one thing I just want to mention, it's not like we're going to like this if we remove, these frictions that we necessarily going to like. Not every change we'll like. Some changes are painful, right? Some changes just take time. But if we feel like we can do it, and that's the belief that we have agency, we're more likely to pursue change. So that is one I go to when I think about how do I give people belief that they can do. Well, it's an opportunity to practice, it's a skills they can learn, etc. So you guys gonna get this stuff? Are you getting a flavor? Give me a sense if you're getting a flavor around friction. So no, this is a lot. This is kind of like, okay, all right. Somebody's giving me a thumbs up. Some of you digest and some of you probably still processing, but this is like distillation of all these disciplines. But I do just, again, takeaway for you, fuel is important, reward is important. Please don't forget, the friction is a very big part. And if you remove the friction from the process. Now, let me give you, as we start wrapping up our session, let me give you, package it into a formula, right? So we've learned right now that emotions are important. but you got to focus on behavior. Emotion is going to drive behavior. Because remember, 10% of your brain is a very exhaustive resource. That if you want to drive behavior change, you got to start thinking about friction and removing the friction from the process. So let me give you a formula of what the behavioral design uses. And when we think about behavior change, as simplistic as this model called COM-B, it's actually one of the evidence-based models that has taken research from over 50 different models of behavior change. And it's my favorite I go to, developed by professionals in the University College of London, and it's used widely in behavioral design. So if you're interested in this topic, you can find a lot of information around COM-B, and you'll get it from me as well. And truly, it distills to the behavior is the function of these three areas: your capability, your physical and psychological capability, psychological and physical. Physical, think about, do you have the skills? Do you have logistically, psychological capability? Are you even motivated to do this? You know, are you even emotionally connected to this change, right? The motivation part is automatic and reflective. By the way, quick distinction. The reflective motivation is more about your beliefs, your values, things that you inspire to be. Automatic is those behaviors that habitual, you do it, but you don't really know why. So this is just the habits you build. Not, again, not to go into too many details, but it's important to distinguish the motivation piece, that some of it is actually inherent from your cultural background, from what your family does, from how you identify yourself. And opportunity. Two areas of opportunity when designing for behavior change that we look for. Do you have physical opportunity? Do you have actually opportunity to practice behavior? Are you able to go for a walk? If we want to tell you you're going to go for a walk, do you live in an area where you have a sidewalk, where it's lit up outside? Or, you know, do you live in an area where it's impossible? So if we're going to design for behavior for you to go 3 times outside, that's going to be a limitation. We have to factor it in and think about how we're going to address if our behavior is you're going to go for a walk 3 times outside. Social, remember, social norms are very important. We're social creatures. This is a big piece, and we oftentimes neglect that. So when I design behavior for organizations, I often think about, okay, who is the important person who can carry that information? What are the social norms? How can we use the social norms to nudge the behavior? How can we show that other groups and organizations do that? Because we don't want to be left behind. We don't want to be, let's say, you know, if you're trying to drive change in one unit and the other unit or behavior, business unit is adopting something, it's sometimes worth bringing them into conversation, normalizing, saying, yeah, we're doing it and it's working, you know. So the COM-B model is really a helpful model to design change. You start looking at the target behavior and analyzing it through the lens of, do you have a capability, motivation, and opportunity? And I actually done some questions for you. I'm going to go back to it. As you receive this, this is a very helpful way. Because by the way, it seems simple, but that's actually really challenging. Like back to the exercise we did, when we were saying what's behavior, what's not behavior. Believe me, I sit there with my colleagues and we sometimes argue what behavior, what is not behavior. So this work is, you know, you go back and forth. So this is not like, you know, one-to-one. So some of the behaviors or interventions fall into what's a capability, it's opportunity, potato. More important to go through your COM-B and start thinking through these questions. I listed as many as possible for you, just so you think from different, you know, physical, what information you need, what training you may need to actually do behavior. Maybe, you know, the physical opportunity, maybe you don't have the shoes to go for a walk. There's no light outside. There's no sidewalk, you know. Who is supporting you through this behavior change? Are your leaders on board are driving this behavior change? you know, and then right there with reflective and automatic motivation, I put more questions, just again, those are, you may not need to go into this detail, but just know motivation is also about how committed you are, is there an innate drive. And another piece from a motivation perspective, I just really want to accentuate, when we say motivation, it can mean so many things. The one way I found that drives motivation, actually probably two, personally and with organizations. First of all, you need to want that. You need to see other people doing. So FOMO is a big thing. Use that where you can. Fear of missing out. Kidding. It's having a plan and seeing progress. When you design something for yourself or for the organizations, when they say, we're going to do this, like when, by what time, the more precise the plan, plus you set reminders to deal with inertia, plus you actually, you know what, you've committed to someone, you want that. It's a commitment that you do with your brother, with your whole organization, you committed to the team. So you start layering these pieces and you start also removing what are the barriers that you have. Okay, plan and progress, nothing more motivating than seeing progress. So you're at the end of your semester, or maybe you already finished it and this is coming. So, but what progress, right? Like this is motivating. Or maybe you're super exhausted because you're all super achievers getting your advanced degrees and stuff like that. Thank you, those who had to head out early, completely get it, it's late, we're wrapping up already. I'm not going to make you into behavioral scientists, but I hope that what you do get out of it is complete paradigm shift from just giving rewards and incentivizing and telling people, let's do it, to, how do we remove the frictions? I offered COM-B just to, you know, credentialize that we do it as a model, it's evidence-based. And it also, what I like about COM-B model, back to the model, that it really just distills to those three areas: capability, motivation, and opportunity. Those of you who are like, I'm kind of curious, can I do this? What can I do? And I'm going to read more. It's part of a bigger behavioral will model. I will include that into, but this is why this is a fantastic tool. So here in the middle of the circle, you have those three drivers of behavior: capability, opportunity, and motivation. The red circle is actually your interventions. What does it mean? This is the things you can do to design. These are options that you can start looking. If you're trying to, let's say you diagnose the behavior, you're looking at this from a perspective, do I have opportunity? Do I have a social? What can you do? And these are the intervention categories you can go towards. And this is the outer layer, policy layer. So this model works great for organizational change. Don't have to go too far, but what I love about it, it addresses things at individual intervention and a policy level. But what really drives it is this process at the end of the day. And that's what I'd love for you to take away. You got to define your target behavior. COM-B analysis is capability, opportunity, and motivation. These are the questions you're going to get. Do not forget to diagnose the friction sources. Remember, you have your inertia. That's your status quo. You have your effort, mental and physical. You got to address those emotions. Bad is bigger for the brain. And you got to address the reactance. And reactance, and somebody tells you, we don't like to be told, right? Or we just naturally resist change that's imposed. We don't resist change that we choose. Interventions. You have a list of things that I told you, and then I'm going to send you, but by interventions and things you're going to do to remove the friction, drive motivation, and make things, plans, progress for yourself or for your organizations, depending on where you want to implement. It's a scaffolding, right? And of course, all of it is very much experimental, meaning I've yet to see that if I just apply this set of things and it works, every organization, every family, every person is different. That's the beauty and complexity of human behavior. But what I like about this approach that it gives you a framework to navigate. So it doesn't become, shall we email communication? Shall we do this? It's no longer this wild, wild west of guessing. There's a science to this that we can apply towards ourselves and our organization. So if you look at it this way and start remembering that friction is an important piece, I certainly hope that it will help you with sustained behavior change. And you guys are going to get all these tools and resources. But I'll end with John Maxwell. And by the way, my husband put in his signature line, and I should probably do the same. I absolutely love this. People change in these 4 conditions for these reasons: when they hurt enough that they have to, when they see enough that they inspire to, when they learn enough that they want to, and when they receive enough that they're able to. With that, put 1 word or 2 words of a takeaway for today. And oh my goodness, somebody put a heart. Thank you. I hope it was of value to you guys. 1 or 2 words of takeaways before you wrap up. We're trying to consolidate. We're trying to layer right now. So this is behavioral science again. 1 or 2 words. I was supposed to be seeing your screen. Yes, you're supposed to be seeing my screen. You guys did not see my screen all this time. Are you telling me all this time you didn't see my screen? And nobody said anything? Wow, you guys are good. I have really cool slides for you that you're just going to have to look at afterwards if you can. Do you guys see the screen now? Now you do, and before you did not. You should have told me, but it's a little too late to fix it. So you'll get those slides, you'll process them, and I really appreciate you all hopping on. I hope you've learned something today, and happy holidays to all of you.
Happy holidays too. Thank you very much.
It was an
Thank you.
absolute pleasure, team.